doing all of these things to help us and help the future generations. He's just an amazing person. We are really blessed to have him in our midst. And if you're interested in contacting him more about this, his email, tweedell@gmail.com, is on your little half sheet there. Okay, and now we are ready to welcome our State Senator Kevin Eltife, who will come tell us about reality and maybe some good things in the midst of it as well. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I don't know, usually when I finish speaking, people are more depressed than when I got here. I've got my cheat notes. I've spoken to this group before and others, and most of you know I like to run through the good, the bad, and the ugly, tell you what we did or didn't do. I'm pretty blunt, and I think I'm pretty direct in my answers, so I like to get through this part and then take your questions. Happy to answer anything I can. First of all, I'd like to tell you about the committees I serve on, in case you don't remember. First of all, I've been in the Senate 8 years. I was the mayor of Tyler for 6 years and on the city council for 5 years prior to that. I'm honored to serve. I'm honored to serve in the Texas Senate, but I always like to tell people, at the end of the day, I'm going to do what I think is best for my district and the state. People don't like it, they can vote me out of office. I'm not in this job for life. I love serving in public office, but the Senate is not my life. My faith and my family come first, and as long as I'm holding office, I'm going to do what I think is best for my district and let the chips fall where they may. I serve on the Finance Committee, the Natural Resource Committee, the Business Commerce Committee. I chair the Administration Committee. I serve on the Economic Development Committee, and I was just appointed about a month ago to the new Water Committee to oversee the implementation of this water plan that the voters approved. And I tell you why that's very important to us is because our problem in Northeast Texas is we're blessed with an abundance of water. Our problem is we have to make sure the Metroplex and the bigger cities keep their hands off our water. We need to make sure that, my concern is Dallas has been forever trying to build Marvin Nichols up in Bowie County in my district. And the problem with that is this, the actual reservoir is not that big, but the mitigation acres end up being another 300,000 acres. It decimates the timber industry up in our part of the state. So the concern I have serving on that committee more than anything is protecting our natural resources for our future economic development, and our children, grandchildren, that we're not just rolled over by the big cities. So I was pleased that Governor Dewhurst put me on that committee. I want to go over the budget right quick with you. I want to highlight where a lot of the money went that we spent. Can y'all hear me okay? Am I talking too fast? Okay. If I'm going too fast or you can't hear me, just say so. I want to highlight where the money went in 2013. I want to hit the high notes of the big bucks. As you know, in 2011, because coming off of the 08 and 09 economic downturn, we had serious budget cuts to make in 2011. We made actual $14 billion, $14 billion with a B in budget cuts in 2011. We balanced the budget with some smoke and mirrors and $14 actual billion in budget cuts. So when we came back in 2013 to session, the economy had improved. We had money to put back in places, and I want to tell you where we put that money. I think it's very important to remember that I said from the beginning of 2011 that it would take serious budget cuts and use of the rainy day fund. That was in 2011. And y'all may remember or may not, I was just pillaged by people who said, oh, we will never touch the rainy day fund. A line in the sand, Eltife's crazy. Well, at the end of the day, that's what we did. We spent it. And what I like to tell you up front is what I think will fix things and what will work. And usually it's what we end up doing after everyone else blasts me for being honest about what we're going to do. But that's what happened. In 2013, public education, we put $4.8 billion back into public education. You may remember in 2011, we cut about $4 billion in public education. And the school districts had concerns about it. The people in public education had concerns about it. We survived. The school districts, to their credit, rolled up their sleeves and made it work. But in 2013, we restored $4.8 billion. Now, a lot of people say, well, why would you put the money back? And let me tell you why. We're back in court right now because of a public education funding that's going on in this state. You may remember We had about 3 or 4 special sessions on school finance reform. We passed a school finance reform package. I voted against it. At the time, I said it wouldn't work. They promised property tax cuts. They promised to cap the local school district's hands on property tax increases, and they put in a business tax that has never worked. It taxes businesses, some that don't even turn a profit. The whole thing was $2 billion a year out of balance when we passed it. I call it the trifecta disaster. I said it wouldn't work. It hasn't worked. We're back in court. And part of the reason we put this money back into public education, and the way we put it back into public education, was to actually help our hand in court. And it appears it has. Now, we don't know for sure. The judge hadn't made a final ruling. But originally, the court was saying we were going to have to put $11 billion into public education, which we don't have $11 billion to put in public education. But after this session was over, the trick with public education is how you fund it, because the argument in court is about equity. And because we're property tax driven on how we fund at the local level, here's the argument. Highland Park's penny of property taxes raises a lot more money than, say, Chapel Hill's penny. So we always end up in court over how do you equitably fund public education in the state of Texas. The other problem is, in our Constitution, we're required to fund public education. So you have to, you have to fund public education, and you have to be careful how you fund it. That's one of the reasons we went back and put $4.8 billion back into public education. Department of Public Safety, we added $122 million to border security. We also added $100 million to increase pay for our Department of Public Safety troopers. And here's why. Today, we need about 1,000 more troopers on the ground in Texas to meet the demands of the state. We have 400 of the 1,000 budgeted, but they're vacant positions. And part of the reason is we have trouble keeping our officers because of the pay. And I know that firsthand experience because when I was mayor of Tyler, we used to steal the DPS officers after the state training. Because the state would spend $40,000 to $50,000, whatever it takes to train an officer, a trooper. He's on the road. I mean, he gets on the road doing his job, and then the city of Tyler or other cities pay more than the state. So we would, end up hiring those guys away after they've been trained by the Department of Public Safety. So we took a step this session to raise pay, and that was $100 million that we put into that. Community colleges, we added $200 million to community colleges. I'll tell you why this is important. When the state doesn't properly fund community colleges, you end up paying for it at the local level. Your property taxes go up. What we like to do in Austin is shift everything to the local level and say we didn't raise your taxes. But I can assure you, if we're not properly funding our share of community colleges, they all have property tax districts. So what ends up happening is they raise your property taxes. So $200 million went into community colleges. Teacher retirement system and the employment retirement system, we put close to $1 billion in those. And if you've ever heard me talk to your group or others, I say there are 4 major problems in the state. Our retirement systems, public education, the way we fund it, water, and roads. And my beef with the pension funds in this state is we've never properly funded them. We've played games with the funding, and our benefits have been too generous. So every session I've harped on the fact, all of you know this, if you look at other cities and states in the country that are in dire straits, a lot of the problems are their pension funds. I mean, Detroit's a perfect example. California, they've got massive unfunded liabilities in pension funds. Well, what we did this session by adding $1 billion to our pension funds is 2 things. We shored up the amount of money in the pension fund, and we also went in and redid the benefits that go out from the pension funds. So we changed the benefit structure for future retirees in the state of Texas on the TRS and the ERS. TRS is Teacher Retirement System. ERS is Employment Retirement System. And we did that to help stop the future liabilities. This was a huge step in shoring up the pension funds that have always been a concern of mine. Excuse me. Mental health, we added $250 million to mental health in the state of Texas. That was very important to me and to people around the state. I firmly believe gun control isn't going to solve a problem, one, with all the shootings you see. The shootings around the country, especially in the schools, are tragic. They're horrible. If you look at the overwhelming majority of those type of incidents are usually related to mental health. So as Republicans, I'm a Republican, if I'm going to run around saying gun control is not the answer, which I firmly believe, we need to be willing to put our money where our mouth is and fund mental health. In the state and in the nation, we've had mental health on the back burner. And it's time we properly fund mental health. And I want to give you an example. Most of you will remember this. Our mental health facilities in the state are back from the 50s. And the way you treated mental health in the 50s, if you think about Rush State Hospital, the way our state hospitals are across the state, we would buy 200 or 300 acre property. We would build a facility. They'd have a garden. They'd grow their own food. They'd be treated in the facility, and there's a cemetery where they died. In other words, we just sent mental health patients to these facilities for their life. That's how it was taken care of. That's still the type of facilities we have in the state of Texas. We haven't upgraded our facilities. We have got to get in front of the mental health issue in the state of Texas. So $250 million was a step in the right direction for mental health. Diversions. I want to talk about diversions right quick, which you hear a lot about. Go on in. You're good. And let me tell you what diversions are. Over the past 10 years or longer, the state politicians like to run around and thump their chest and tell you we didn't raise your taxes. But they've raised they, me, whoever. I'm not trying to shift the blame here. I'm trying to just give you the facts. They've raised every fee in the state and every other thing you want to call it. Like, for instance, I don't remember the year because it was before I got to Austin. They added sporting goods items sold to sales tax. And all that money was going to go to Parks and Wildlife. So all the sports enthusiasts across the state went out. This was a constitutional amendment, the ballot. They all pushed this because it was going to help Parks and Wildlife and the hunting and fishing across the state. Well, it generated so much money, we put some of it in Parks and Wildlife, and then we diverted the rest to the general fund. Same with, I use another example that I can think of off the top of my head. The medical association, the doctors that pay licensing fees every year. There's the Texas Medical Agency that regulates licensing. If you have a complaint against a doctor, you call that agency. These aren't exact numbers, but I'm going to give you an example. Those fees raise like, say, $50 million. Well, we give that agency $10 million to operate, and we take the other 40 and put it in the general fund. Same with plumbing fees or electrical fees. Over a period of time, we have diverted $5 billion from all these various fees, all in the name of, I really didn't raise your taxes. Well, that's just not true. I mean, we raised them in another form called fees. And it's a big issue. Everybody wants us to stop the diversions. The problem with stopping the diversions now is to take that $5 billion out of general revenue, you leave a $5 billion hole. So what we've committed ourselves to, what we did this session, we took a step in the right direction. We cut the diversions by 20%. So we took $1 billion and put it back where it belonged and cut $1 billion out of all that diversions. It's a step in the right direction. There's a commitment to completely do away with diversions and be truthful in where that money is raised and where it is spent. It's more transparent that way, and it ought to be done that way. Let's talk about the 4 things I think that have to be fixed. I've kind of talked about a couple of them already. Public education. The funding mechanism for public education is broken. It doesn't work. The so-called fix we said was going to fix this thing has not fixed anything. It's still out of balance. The gross receipts tax we put in place, some businesses pay taxes and they have no income because it's a gross receipts tax. It's a problem. And now we're back in court on public education, waiting for a judge to do something to the state of Texas on how much we need to fund or not fund, or are we equitable or not. We've got to fix it properly and get out of the courthouse. And I don't know about you, I'm in real estate. I've seen no real property tax relief on my property tax bills over the last 5 years since that was passed. So I haven't seen much benefit from what we did. Pension funds, that's the other big issue in the state of Texas. I think we took a real step in the right direction by funding more and cutting the benefit stream. Water, the bill we've had, the deal we asked the voters to approve was a step in the right direction. Was it perfect? No. And all that really really is a revolving loan fund. It's a $2 billion revolving loan fund, and the purpose of that is to try to get local entities to jumpstart water projects. Here's the problem. The problem is if we don't build some reservoirs and get water projects going in the state of Texas, we're going to be in dire trouble over the next 20 years. We've had a plan for 20 years. We've had no way to implement the plan. So this is a baby step in the right direction. It's not going to solve the problem, but it's a step in the right direction. Here's the other side that concerns me. 2 sessions ago, there was a bill, they wanted to designate 19 reservoirs across the state. We don't need 19 reservoirs. I don't know how many we need, but we don't need 19. And we don't need to cloud people's property title or property rights with 19 reservoirs that will never be built. That's the other problem. Once you designate a reservoir, if you've got farmland up in Bowie County and we say we're designating this Marvin Nichols, it puts a cloud over your property. I mean, if you want to sell it, the next buyer is going to say, well, I'm not sure I want to buy this at what price, because the state can come in and eminent domain it when they're ready to build a reservoir. What we have to do is have the money in place to build the reservoirs, designate the ones we're actually going to build, and we're going to fund and build them. Now, if I were king, which I don't see happening anytime soon, what I would do is I would have the state go build and own some reservoirs. And I'll tell you why. They're a cash cow. The problem is, some people in Austin say, oh, Eltife, that's just big government. Why do you want the state to go build something? Well, let me just tell you something. There's a reason Boone Pickens is buying water. It's because it's a money maker. And if the state would go build some reservoirs, you'd self-fund them. They'd pay for themselves. But that's not going to happen either, because some people think it's big government. But otherwise, we're in trouble unless we get some reservoirs built. We have got to build reservoirs for future water supply. The last item on my list of problems is Texas Department of Transportation, the biggest elephant in the room nobody wants to talk about. How do you pay for roads in the state of Texas? Let me tell you what we've done the last 10 years. First, let me tell you, which will put a frown on your face, what I've called for the last 10 years. I've called for raising the gas tax a dime and indexing it to inflation, or some form of sales tax, expanding the sales tax base, or increase the sales tax. And everybody says, Eltife, you're going to raise more taxes. Let me tell you how we funded it. We have doubled the state's debt in the last 10 years, paying for roads. We've borrowed $17 billion to build road projects. Now, I'm sorry, but that is not the conservative way to build roads. A bond, debt, is a tax on a future generation. And my point is, if you remember what was done in the city of Tyler, we raised the half-cent sales tax, we pay cash for all our improvements, we have a 19-cent property tax rate, we have 0 general obligation bond debt in the city of Tyler. It's a model for the entire state. The state could operate the same way if we had the political courage to tell the people the truth. Borrowing money for roads makes no sense to me. It just doesn't. The other thing we've done is we've gone and given the cream toll roads to the private sector. I'm in real estate. If I own the best corner in town, I don't give it to anybody else, I ground lease it. I ground lease the Walgreens in Burkeville Center, I ground lease the Chewy's out on South Broadway, that's what I do for a living. I'm not going to sell it and give it away. That's what the state has done with our main corridors in the bigger cities, is we've let a private group come in, take control of it, and toll it. And now the problem is they have the unlimited ability to raise that toll. It's a real problem. Now, do we never want a toll road? No, I would not say that. Once again, if I were king, what I would have done is if you've got a captive audience in Dallas and you're going to have a money-making toll road, I don't have a problem the city tolling it, bonding that, the toll pays for the bond, and when you've paid off the bonds, you do one of two things. You either kill the toll, or that revenue stream goes to Texas Department of Transportation for rural Texas. Because we can't toll stuff around here. We can't toll the stuff we need. The tolls won't pay for stuff we need in Northeast Texas. Texas Department of Transportation is a problem. We're $4 billion a year short of the revenue we need just to maintain the state's current infrastructure level and congestion level. That's not reducing congestion across the state, it's just maintaining it. And we've paid for it in the last 10 years with a credit card. So politicians can run around and say they didn't raise your taxes. They've raised your taxes, they've doubled the state's debt. All right, I want to tell you, I'm going to be quick, I promise, because I'd rather have your questions. Let me tell you, there's 4 things I tried to do during session, 2 we passed, 2 we didn't. You've heard a lot about probably the pharmacy school for UT Tyler. I thought that was a great idea. Dr. Mabry and Berkshire's and even Walmart came to us early on and said, look, we don't want any state revenue for this. It's a business model. We're going to raise the money to build the building. The tuition's going to be fully fund the school. I looked at them and thought they were crazy. I said, you know, there's no way this is going to work. You're hiding something here. But after months of looking at everything, they didn't want any state funding. So we did get it passed out of the Senate, passed out of the House. They've raised over $7 million, I think, for the building. They're paying for the building. And this is a self-funded pharmacy school. Why is it good for us? It's good for all of East Texas. It's economic development. There's also a shortage of pharmacists in our area. I didn't realize this because I'm not in the business. But that's why Berkshire's and a lot of pharmacies and Walmart wanted this implemented. Because evidently when these pharmacists go off to other states or other parts of the state, where they end up getting their pharmacy license, they end up staying. You know, they get a job there. And so, anyway, it's a good piece of legislation. It's good because no state funding. It's a good program for East Texas. The other piece of legislation, Emergency Service District, the county commissioners sent us a unanimous letter asking that we pass emergency service districts to be voted on. As you know, that's the fire district where we have these this appointed group that is basically implementing a tax without answering to the voters. And I thought that was a very good idea. It makes sense. It's going to be a taxing entity. You ought to have to stand up to the voters and take the hit. So we passed that out of the Senate and the House. Now it's in the county commissioners' hands. We did single member districts, so they have to figure out the county, how to divide the county equally into districts. And before long, you'll be voting for a member of the Emergency Service District Board that taxes you on your fire district, if you have a fire district. 2 items that were not successful, believe that or not, I didn't get to pass everything. I had a term limit bill that would have limited the terms of statewide elected officials to 2 terms rather. You may not know this, but we have unlimited terms on governor, lieutenant governor, railroad commission, comptroller. Any statewide office holder, there are no term limits on those. I filed it. Everybody said, Eltife, why aren't you including yourself? I mean, what's the matter with you? Well, here's the problem. I watered this thing down so much just to try to pass it to get it to the voters. Because my thinking was, if we ever got it to the voters, it passed 90% to 10, and maybe it'd wake everybody else up to continue to push more term limit bills. If I had the legislature in there, it never got out of committee. I mean, they would have never voted for it. So I took the legislature out. I even grandfathered the current statewide office holders. I even watered that down because everybody was going to say, "Oh, you're after Rick Perry." Well, I made it watered down as I could just to try to get it to the ballot. I got it out of the Senate. Bipartisan vote out of the Senate. It failed in the House, so I couldn't get it out of the House. I'm going to try again next session because I firmly believe term limits at every level of government is going to be the only thing that saves us. So I'm going to try again on that one. I had one other constitutional amendment. I've talked to you about the Texas Department of Transportation and the amount of debt. I kind of copied the Tyler model, as I'll call it, that we did there. I had a constitutional amendment I was trying to get passed that would raise the sales tax in the state 0.5%, voter approved, only if the voters approved it. It would all go to reduce the debt of Texas Department of Transportation. We would get out of debt, I think it was 12 years earlier, and it would save $6 billion in interest payments, and it was sunsetted. So when the debt went away, the tax went away. I couldn't get it out of committee. Everybody looked at me and said, "Oh, Eltife, it's a tax. We're not voting for a tax." I'm like, well, I think this one makes sense. It would have saved us a lot of money and get us out of debt, but nobody wanted to go for it. So I'm going to stop there and take the questions. I'll get some water.
If you all have any questions, I would like for you to stand up if you can and speak loudly. That way we won't be trying to pass microphones around.
Yes, sir.
So And if you'll stand and speak loudly to ask your question. Let's see how this works, if everybody
I
can
can
hear.
come, I
we're
can get closer
fine.
to y'all, that helps.
Speaker, my name is Jerry Jackson. I'm a lawyer in Lindale. I travel extensively nationwide, but particularly throughout the state of Texas. Many times I fly and rent a car, a lot of times I drive. I go to toll roads in Dallas, the airport, here, Austin, San Antonio, Houston. Everyone's got a different tag. What I would like for y'all to consider doing is having one single tag for all the state offices, if that's economically feasible. It looks to me like it is.
It is, and it's actually in the works. You're not the first person to bring that up. I think there's, the main two are toll tag, and I forget the other one, text tag and toll tag. And there is an effort, I think there was legislation passed to combine them, but you've got this turf battle between the different tolling authorities going on, but there is an effort to do that. Because I'm with you, I've got one tag, and when I go to the airport, there's this other one. I don't know what's what, and I'm supposed to know, and I don't know. I'm clueless.
Is there any way to get back, having sold off all this to private entities, is there any way to backtrack on that?
No, and it's shameful what has happened. I'm telling y'all, it's the biggest giveaway ever on these private toll roads. A lot of it to this Spanish company. No, it's a perpetual contract. Y'all may remember, this is all the brouhaha early on where those contracts were locked and sealed and we couldn't get them because they said it was proprietary information. And they're perpetual contracts. And some of these tolls in Dallas, you can get on a toll road and spend $16 real quick. And there's no cap on what these companies can charge. I'm telling you, we have given away the farm on some of these toll roads. It's sad what we've done to the future of the state. Very sad. And it's
Who was responsible for that decision? Where's the buck stop?
Your governor pushed most all of that.
Tell it whoever it is.
Your governor pushed that along with what was it called? The corridor. Trans-Texas Corridor. This was all part of the big Trans-Texas Corridor. We're going to build all this infrastructure in Texas with no taxes. I'm telling y'all, there are times when you have to have revenue to fix things. This is a perfect example of saying, I'm not going to raise your taxes, no new taxes as long as I'm here. And so what we've done is we've done everything else. Private-public partnerships, fees, toll roads. I'd have done anything to have raised the gas tax 10 years ago properly and not have, so everybody pays. Mm-hmm. Now we've got debt and we've got toll roads. Somebody's got to pay for it. And as Republican, I don't know if everybody here is Republican or not, whatever you are, but I like consumption taxes. I like it because everybody pays. Yes. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be, I'm not married to a gas tax. Make it a sales tax. Auto repairs are not taxable with sales tax. You can sales tax auto repairs to help pay for roads. You can raise the sales tax 0.25%. This is not, you don't need, you have to go crazy. Small tweaks can fix this. But we're so far in the hole now, it's a mess. Also, some people can run around saying, I don't have a tax increase on my resume. I'm going to run for another office. Well, I'd rather have passed a gas tax and you voted me out and fix something than run around bragging I didn't raise the tax. I'm sorry, that's the way I feel.
I have always been impressed with the half-cent sales tax of Tyler. You see those signs all the time. Business paid for, whatever's going on.
It's the same concept. And I know it's hard because the public doesn't, I get it. I don't want to pay any more taxes, and people say, oh, they're elected officials, they're not going to tell the truth, and they're not going to do what they say what they're going to do with it. Sometimes you have to tell the truth, and you have to put your neck out on the line and get something done. We did that with the half-cent sales tax. It worked. You do it in state government if people weren't worried about their next job. Yes, sir.
If you did that.
Wait, would you stand and talk loud, please? Thank you.
If you did that, and made that percentage of the sales tax go towards the infrastructure, would it be a good idea to get rid of the diversions first?
Absolutely. And I don't disagree with you, and that's one of the things, part of the diversions we have in TxDOT are in that $5 billion I was talking about. It is a problem, but it's only about, I think, don't hold me to this, but I think the TxDOT piece of that's only about $300 million. It's a lot of money. I'm not saying it's not, but that alone is not gonna solve our problem, but yes, the answer is yes, and that's a lot of the reason people don't trust us, is because they hear the word diversion, and you're mixing the pot around, and why would we give you more money that you're gonna divert somewhere? I absolutely get it. Yes, sir.
Nationwide, we've seen a big increase in Medicaid rolls and in disability. I don't know in Texas what that hit's been, but I am curious as to what's the financial hit in Texas now, and what are we doing about it, and what is it gonna be, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 10 years down the road?
It is killing us. It is absolutely killing us. And when you look at our overall budget, that piece is sucking us dry of all the increased revenue every year. So what happens to us is, your sales tax does nice every year in Texas. We're a growing state. Sales tax revenue increases. Our oil and gas taxes have increased nicely. A lot of new money coming into the state. And everybody says, why can't you fix all this with that? That's one of the biggest problems, is it's bleeding us dry, and it will break the state if we don't get it under control. It's horrible. And we've asked, of course, we've gotten nowhere with this current administration, let us block grant Medicaid, to try to give us the money and let us come up with our own guidelines to try to stop the bleeding. That hasn't gotten anywhere. In the 11 session, when we were so upside down money-wise, I served on the Medicaid subcommittee with Senator Nelson chair, who's chair of Health and Resources. We had to find, I think, like $20 billion in savings, and so we went through the process. Y'all, it's so costly, and there's so many adding to the rolls. Every 2 years, we have a 2-year budget. It's killing us. And it's going to break the states, not just Texas. It's the biggest problem we face. And the problem is without help from the federal government, I don't know how we solve it without giving us some latitude to fix it. And, there was someone recommended 2 years ago, well, longer than that, just get out of it. Well, you can't just get out of it, because I think we put 20 cents in and get 80 cents from the federal government, and that number is huge, what we spend. I mean, you can't, so you're going to tell that entire group of people who are on Medicaid in the state of Texas, you don't have any coverage? I mean, you can't do that either. Plus, it'd break your hospitals, because believe it or not, that Medicaid piece is a big part of their bread and butter income for all of our hospitals. I mean, they're seeing those patients, as small a reimbursement as they get, it's still a reimbursement. It is a major problem that has to be fixed. And Obamacare just made it worse. So, it's killing us.
Is there a doctor shortage in the state currently?
I don't know the answer to that, John. I really don't know. We're in such a, we're pretty blessed around here because we've got wonderful health facilities. So I don't see it here, but so I don't know.
Well, I see my bills that come back, Medicare authorized this amount, the doctor got this amount. It goes from thousands to hundreds to pennies.
Well, and the problem, you may not have a shortage of doctors, but you're going to have a shortage of doctors who are willing to treat Medicare patients.
Right.
Now, if you ask it that way, that's a different story. Because yes, you're going to see a lot of that, because the federal government's squeezing them so down on their reimbursements. That's their answer to everything, is just pay the docs less. A lot of them are going to opt out and not want to treat Medicare and Medicaid patients. And that is happening. So that's a different angle.
My 2 doctors retired.
Well, you know what? This is how screwed up we are now with Obamacare. I've got Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I went to see my allergy doctor. I just want to get an allergy shot. It's driving me crazy. So I call up there and said, I just want an appointment. Well, who's your insurance with? I said, I just want to pay you. I think it's $65, whatever it was. I'm just going to pay you out of my pocket. No, you have to have a referral. If you have insurance, you have to have a referral. I said, well, I want to pay you. And they said, you can't do that, because we have to document everything. So I had to call my doctor, Earl, and say, will you give me a referral over here? And he said, the nurse said, we can no longer do a referral over the phone. The doctor has to see you. I swear. And I said, no, that can't be. I had to go physically see Dr. Earl. I had to use my insurance. I can't pay. He had to send me back to my allergy doctor, and I mean, it was insane. I mean, and they want a record of all our health. So when they take over, they tell us what we can and can't have. Yes, sir.
So is our state house just throwing their hands up in the air saying, we don't know what to do, so we'll ignore it? And you didn't list that as one of the major problems.
Well, I need to add it, because my four are getting old, and pensions is getting better. I do need to add it. Here's the problem I have with the way we've handled this situation in Texas, is all we've been is a no, and we haven't been creative on what we would be for. And y'all know, you'll see, and this, I catch a lot of flack for stuff like this. If I'm going to be a no, I'm going to tell you my answer. If I'm against something, I want to tell you how I fix it. Texas has not done that with the Medicaid problem. Other states have. Some states have looked for answers. Our answer has been no. We don't want any part of you, blah, blah, blah. We'll take your funds, but don't, we're not going to come up with a solution. We should, as big a state as we are, come up with a solution and go to Washington and sell it. We should go sell the Texas model. But we don't do that. We just say no. We're not creative. And that takes leadership at the top, and right now, we're not getting it.
Will we have it?
I pray we get it.
You know who the candidates are.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating. Here's what's frustrating to me. The Republicans control the House, Texas, the House, the Senate, and every statewide office. Have since I've been there. I thought when I got there, I said, I'm not going to agree with everybody on everything. But if our party has a plan, if the top 3 or 4 office holders say, here's a problem, here's how we're going to solve it, I'll be a team player. I mean, if it's within reason. I got the governor, lieutenant governor, speaker, they're all Republicans, and they say, all right, here's how we're going to solve Medicaid. I may not accept all of it, but as a group, we're going to work together and go fix it. We have none of that. It's every man for himself. So the fear I have for the Republican Party in Texas is we're not solving problems. And if we don't solve problems that people can relate to, we're going to lose this state. If you don't fix public education, do you want us to fix it, or do you want the next party to fix it? Transportation. I promise you, you're going to have new revenue to fix public transportation in the state of Texas. You're going to have it. Now the question is, do you want us to be the decision maker on that, or do you want to wait till the Democrats take over and let them decide? The problem is we don't have anybody with political courage that wants to fix anything today. It's how do I get through the next primary, or how do I run for the next higher office? And we need to fix problems. And not every problem is going to take money. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we need public education. We should have already traveled to every state. And the states that have the best public education and that have already fixed things, why aren't we doing that? Why are we just kicking the can down the road on public education? Got to have somebody that's willing to step out a little bit to rock the boat. Yes, sir.
On the subject of transportation and back to the toll roads, I understand that there has been an effort in the state for some time to take roads that the taxpayers have already paid for and convert those into toll roads. Is that effort still underway? And if so, how do we get it started?
It'll never happen, and we're not going to let it happen. It's another effort to squeeze money and call it not a tax. Everything is done so they can say, I didn't raise your taxes. It's a back door to taxes. I'd rather look you in the eye and tell you, this is how I'm raising your taxes. You may not like me, you may vote me out of office, but I'm going to sleep at night because I told you the truth.
You say it's not going to happen.
No, it'll never pass the legislature.
Why not?
I think there's so much anger toward toll roads now, and there's been so much damage done by the fact we gave them to the private sector. I mean, it's just a bad taste in everybody's mouth about it. I mean, I just can't imagine it getting out of either Senate or House. I really can't. It's another backdoor way to pay for something. Yes, sir.
You're probably too young to remember this, but back in the 60s, I was working for the Department of Transportation, and they had the Dallas-Fort Worth tolling. And once that was paid off, it became free. So where did the reversal in that process start?
I'll tell you exactly. I mean, I remember that because when we used to drive to Six Flags, I thought it was the neatest thing because I got to put money in the bucket. I love the toll road. My mother didn't like it, but I liked it because I got to put money in the bucket. But you know, where it happened was this. We used to systematically, not systematically, but as we went through years when we needed to keep up with inflation or whatever, pay for the cost infrastructure of the state, we raised the gas tax. That's how we kept up. We haven't raised the gas tax, I think, in 15 years. So what you've done is you've not kept up. How much does it cost to build a road today, and how much did it cost 15 years ago? How much has the state grown? How much do these massive intersections cost and the mixed masters cost? Billions of dollars. So we haven't created any new revenue. Now you have cars with much higher gas mileage, so the volume of gas we sell is less, so the gas tax revenue is less. Nothing is kept up with the growth and inflation in the state. So our answer has been toll roads, fees, toll roads. I mean,
Well, the federal gas taxes kept going up.
well, I don't think they've raised, when did they raise the federal gas tax last?
I'm not sure.
I don't-
Went up by a year.
They raised it 50 cents.
50 cents a gallon.
In federal is? I don't think they've raised it in quite a while, but
It's been a good number of years.
it's been a good number of years. But I mean, the point being, we used to be the envy of the country. Probably when you worked there, we were on a pay-as-you-go basis. We paid cash for our roads. And we raised the revenue needed to keep up with that. And then we got ourselves in a trap where we said, not on my watch, no new taxes. So what's happened is we begged, borrowed, stole to pay for this stuff. Sold out to the private sector. The state's debt 10 years ago was $17 billion. Today it's $42 billion. Now, the majority of that is bonds for roads. And the politicians say, I didn't raise your taxes. Do y'all mind voting for some more bonds for roads? It's a tax on a future generation. It's got to be paid back. The reason now we don't have enough money for the ongoing maintenance of roads, we spend $1 billion a year in interest on the bonds. We've eaten up our own cash flow. Did I answer your question? I just did. This subject gets me so upset. Yeah, it really gets me riled up because, you know, people read something I'll say in the paper about raising gas taxes and I get all this hate mail, you know. But when I can talk to a group and try to halfway explain it, it makes a little better sense because where we've been is not good. Now, I also want to say one other thing. It doesn't mean there's not fat in state government. We can't save money and cut things. I'm not saying that. But there's a balance to what you have to do, and this problem is not going to fix itself. Yep.
I want to thank you for coming here and hashing all this out. I think that's fantastic. I guess I don't know how hard this question is. Where and when can we get together where I can ask you the dozens of questions that I have?
Anytime you want.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like at Rick's? Lunch?
Well, if we're going to ask...
Or some hideaway? Well,
wherever
okay.
you want. If we do it at Rick's, I'm not going to drink while you're getting answered.
Oh, yeah,
He's going
okay.
to try to get me on some beer and then...
Okay, one easy question.
I'll give you my email or phone before I leave.
Yeah, okay. Why can't we treat water like oil?
In terms of...
Oil doesn't belong to the state. Why should the water?
Well, if you want water to belong, you want the water to belong to the individual property owner.
Or part of it that will encourage.
Okay.
What do you say,
We can do that.
conservation?
If you're going to complain about gas prices, wait till you pay your water bill.
Well, I mean that will encourage conservation. And I've been on the left coast for a long
I'm
time,
just
so.
saying, if you have private water rights, if people own all that water, expect to pay a hell of a lot more for water.
Well,
That's what's going to happen. I'd like it.
somebody's got to pay for it.
I'd be happy to do it because I'd make money, but it drives up the cost of water quite a bit. Yes, sir.
Served on the Northeast Texas Water Board for 8 years. We were fighting Marvin Nichols and Waters Bluff both. But you mentioned that there were 16 reservoirs been designated and that needs to be reduced. Is there some effort underway to reduce them? And are we gonna be affected? Because we got more water than anybody else.
And actually, it was 19 reservoirs, but that bill died. We fought it and the bill died. There was a bill to designate 19, and a bunch of us, I think that was 2 or 3 sessions ago, killed it. Because we were like, first of all, if you don't have the money to build them, why would you designate them? Because it really does cloud people's property. You know, it's a detriment to the property owner. So we were like, no, we're not gonna rush out and designate 19 reservoirs that aren't ever gonna be built because we don't have any money. So now the point is, this revolving loan fund is not gonna fix any, I mean, it helps, but it's not gonna fix anything. It's an encouragement. What that does is say, let's say City of Tyler had a water project and they won't go do it. This is a 20% grant for the equity for them to go build it. It's a revolving loan, they gotta pay it back. It's gonna help kind of jumpstart some stuff, but it's not gonna fix the reservoir issue because they cost so much. You know, I don't know how many we actually have to build in the state of Texas. I hear in the next, really, if we would concentrate on building 5, it would go a long way to fixing things to help get us down the road. But once again, we don't have them funded. And
Well, the Marvin Nichols proposal by the Dallas-Fort Worth area is to pay 100% of the cost. It's going up about $50,000 a month for inflation. Last count I saw was $3.1 billion, and they're willing to pay all of it and let East Texas have 20% free.
here's the biggest problem, because this was the biggest issue when I ran for this seat, because I have that's my district. Bowie County's my district. I go all the way up to Texas County. Biggest hot button issue when I ran, and we got it fixed a little bit, or worked on a little bit. The biggest problem is when I ran, Dallas is already cutting a deal up there, just like you said. What their deal was, they were going to pay for the reservoir. They were going to take 80% of the water, leave 20% of the water there. And they had the Chamber of Commerce and all these people signing off on it. And then some activists got involved and said, wait a minute, here's the problem, is the mitigation acres. No one was really, that 80-20 split on the water wasn't that bad a deal for us, because if you're going to build it, I mean, 20% would take care of us for, I mean, it's a lot of water. The problem was the mitigation acres. It's 300,000 acres, because, you know, the EPA comes in and says, you're moving this bird, so you got to have 10 more acres for that bird and 20 acres. I mean, it's an EPA issue because of the moving of the wildlife. It comes out to 300,000 more acres, which it's all timberland. So the proposal was, after I got in office, working with everybody, was, okay, Dallas, you want to do that? Split the mitigation acres with us. You put 80% of the mitigation acres in your area, and we'll do 20% of the mitigation acres here. They won't do it. See, they don't want to do that. That's the biggest heartburn over that deal, is the amount of acreage you displace because of the mitigation acres. That kills the deal. It kills the industry, timber industry up there, big time. I mean, decimates counties' tax base. And Dallas wouldn't do it. So that's still the rub, is how do you do
You
that?
mentioned 300,000 acres, so last I heard it's 175,000, has it been increased in size?
The total acreage is 350,000 acres, I think. But the biggest chunk of that is mitigation acres, because of the EPA requirement. And, you know, Dallas was just trying to get up there and steamroll it, and it got kind of laid to rest for a little while. But it's going to resurface now that you got a revolving loan.
We've got to have water.
No, absolutely. I'm not opposed to water, but if we're going to have it and it's going to be ours, we want a seat at the table and we want it to be a fair deal. Otherwise, we're not doing it. Yeah, Bob.
On mitigation acres, did the U.S. Congress and Senate pass a bill to require that? Or is it just another unelected bureaucrat telling us what to do?
Well, that's a good question, but I know wherever it came from, you cannot get around it. And it's the reason that these reservoirs don't get built and these lakes don't get built. It's the biggest obstacle is it takes 10, 15 years to get a permit from the EPA on one of these deals. I mean, that's the biggest problem.
The feds are causing it.
Absolutely.
Unelected bureaucrat.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. That's another reason, if it were me, I'd take the state's clout and collateral and cash, and I'd go build 5 myself and own them, because we'd be able to cut through that a lot quicker than these local entities. That's what I would do. And I'd own it, and I'd sell that water to entities, and I'd make money. It's just like a toll road. When it was done, when you pay those bonds off, that cash flow can go right back to the state. Be a cash cow. But that's big government. We don't want to do something like that. Yes,
Oh, what, can I do one last one?
Sure, go ahead.
You know, on the toll roads, once again, property rights. Rather than just taking people's eminent domain, reserve some of that land as income from the tolls to the property owner that allowed the toll to be built there.
Well, I would never, I mean, that makes sense to me. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. But most of these toll roads now are, the ones they built here recently are all in the, you know, big part of the cities and metroplex and everything. You know, that would have applied to Governor Perry's Trans-Texas corridor where he was gonna just wipe out the state with some,
Is it true that that is still being built down around Falfurrias?
is it? It's
Yeah.
dead up,
Yeah.
it's dead everywhere
I
else.
No,
understand if
it's
you
not
go
really-
down there, it's being built around Falfurrias.
Well, all we've become is a state of toll roads.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of crazy.
Where did you stand on this business of, the 49 extension through Lindale and pushing it up faster?
I was
and-
totally opposed to it.
Oh, thank you.
And I'll tell you why. Well, I don't like tax increment financing. And what you're doing is, with tax increment financing, is you're collecting tax from a specific area. That specific area, I don't like it. I didn't like it when I was mayor of Tyler. They wanted to do it for the TJC Center. I mean, I've opposed it every step of the way because you're taking away the right, those future elected officials, to spend that money in the budget. So what you've done is, if you pass that today, future commissioners' courts, any of that new revenue is stuck over here, and the commissioners' court don't get the budget. So what if we have a severe downturn and we need that money for public safety? It's gone. We lost control of it. You don't give up your growth. You don't tax increment areas. You don't do it. Before you know it, you've got a divided county, a little pot here, a little pot there, a little pot. I don't like it.
My concern was that Northeast Texas Authority, whatever that long name is, anyway, that they are not an elected entity,
Exactly.
and yet tax money would be given to them. And I thought we tried to form a country several hundred years ago, fighting against something like that.
You're right, and what the other thing it does, it perpetuates this borrowing money to build these roads. What they want to do is sink all that money into that entity, and then they're going to go bond the rest of that. Now, that lets the state off the hook to properly fund something. The state is obligated to properly fund this stuff, and the more we squeeze money out of fees and tolls and debt, we're not going to live up to our obligation. And that's what that was about. I was totally opposed to it, and I told Judge Baker and Jeff Moore I was opposed to it.
Thank you.